There's a harbor in my heart where you used to fix your sails. There was no berthing fee to pay, and there were no documents to sign. You used to just relax before figuring out what you needed to do, for the ocean is vast, yet wherever you went, the currents always lead back to you. Now there's a museum in town full of memories of you. Seems the council here have nothing better to do. They change room by room as the outer you grew. But when you switch off the lights, the inner you still glows. There's a harbor in my heart where you used to fix your sails. There was no berthing fee to pay, and there were no documents to sign. If the storms grow too long, why not set sail for me? Otherwise, at least know that there's a part of you here, alive and so full of fire that I'm wondering if it's you that's powering all of these lights. That I'm wondering if it could be you who is powering all these street lights. There's a harbor in my heart where you can come and fix your sails. There will be no berthing fee to pay. And there will never be any documents to sign.
I'm going to have an interview with a gorgeous guy today. I've interviewed him once before, quite a long interview. But he's got a book, Radical Curiosity, and Reclaiming Mental Freedom in an Age of Indoctrination. Russell Storey. Storey's a good name for a novelist, do you think, Storey? Anyway, I just want to read out this. This is Growth is Always Good. We are taught from an early age that growth is the ultimate measure of success. Bigger profits, expanding economies, rising numbers. These are celebrated as clear signs we're moving in the right direction. Politicians and executives promise growth as the answer to poverty, conflict, and stagnation. Headlines cheer higher GDP as a universal good, rarely pausing to ask growth of what, for whom, and at what cost. The unexamined worship of growth has become a modern mogma, a belief, I'll have to look that word up, a belief so widely accepted it's invisible, yet powerful enough to shape nearly every direction in our societies. Growth can indeed bring progress. It can lift people from poverty, spark innovation, and improve living standards. But the myth begins when we forget that growth is only good if what is growing serves human and planetary well-being. Cancer grows, pollution grows, debt grows. When growth becomes the goal itself, detached from purpose, it starts to devour the very foundations of what it once promised to improve. This is in the Bad Book Company. I'm going to put the links in the show notes too. And we're going to have a chat to Russell Storey now. Okay, Russell, admit you changed your name to Try Sell Books, didn't you?
I did indeed.
Your second name is Side Bottom or something like that. There's no jokes aside. Yeah, man, it's great to meet you again. The last time I met you, I think was in a park, and we had a long talk. Before we get to the book, how have you been since then? That was about 2 years ago. What has the last 2 years been like for you?
Oof. Well, I guess I'll start by saying thanks for having me on, Michael. It's great to see you again.
It's a pleasure.
And
pleasure.
The last 2 years, I don't know, a fever dream of some sort. It has rumbled on. The crazy has rumbled on, and I've found myself. The interview we did was probably the first time I'd spoken to anybody about how I really felt about what was going on. And the level of isolation in my life was kind of hard to put into words. It wasn't something I ever expected to experience. And I made the decision that we can get busy living or get busy dying, right? And we've got to get on and start looking towards the future and making some sort of semblance of what on earth we've lived through. But me being the kind of person that I am, the why question hovered just relentlessly in my mind around, how do we get here? Why is this happening? What's going on? And how have we got a country full of amazing people, and yet here we are? And so I soldiered on with my work, but being a breath worker during times of COVID has been a little tricky, with people being too terrified to be in the same room as each other, and then again having a different perspective on a lot of things to many people, and certainly many people that I grew up with and many people that I'm associated with. That the isolation, as I say, it messes with you. I'm not sure how you guys have found it, but I'm a relatively social being.
I'm just sharing your Twitter thing because it's Twitter's changed. You used to go just live. Now you've got to tell them it's live.
Press OK.
And so look, to be honest, isolation is really strange. I think I was telling you we were at that party the other day, or that dinner party at Yvonne's and Gustav's, and you can actually get very lonely town to town, where everyone's just looking at the bus like fear. No one comes forward, and there's just this uncomfortable silence everywhere. And I think that's the joy of having each other. Is our closeness comes from the fact that we can feel it around us, that often we're unwanted, and then out of the blue it'll become one of our tribe, and it's like hugs, and it's like, oh my god.
I was sharing my book with some new friends just last Sunday. It was a leaving party for a couple that I've got to meet through this, and met some other freedom people. And it's it's like, I don't know, it's almost like coming up for oxygen or something like that when you discover someone you can speak freely to, and you don't have to worry about tripping over a cultural landmine that's going to get you excommunicated from wherever you are, and from friendships and relationships. And that's probably been the hardest thing for me, Michael. I moved home. I remember sharing with you, I lived in Scotland for nearly 20 years. Moving home in 2019, and big part of that plan was reconnecting with so many people that I love and care about and wanted to spend more time with. And I couldn't have ever imagined something like this happening, where this big sort of roller door has just been pulled down and in between us. And I've had some very sad situations, people, not just as we've spoken about, people being sick and dying and all those kinds of things, but just from a friendship level, and people that I thought I knew quite well and that I thought knew me. And so that was part of kind of wrestling through what's actually gone on and how we've ended up here, because I think, like all good questions, we apply it to ourselves in the first instance. And I often thought, had I not been through a set of personal circumstances that led me to where I am, would I have made a different decision? If I'd been in a different set of circumstances in my life, if I'd been responsible for kids, or I might not have had the real possibility to sort of say, listen, no, thank you. And and I know a lot of people have found themselves, really hamstrung by the system that's been built up around us.
Yes.
And but I know a lot of people, like as you say, there's kind of this uneasy silence in the country at the moment because it's getting
Yeah.
so ridiculous and so preposterous, and the fakeness of everything is just becoming increasingly apparent. And yet I'm not quite sure how we kind of lead people, through to the other side. And so that was really the foundational idea for the book was, people aren't stupid, they've been lied to.
No,
And
they're not stupid.
that's a very different thing, and
Yeah.
they've been structurally lied to as well. And a lot of these lies
Yeah.
started before we were even born. And so we haven't
Yeah,
really
that's right.
stood a chance, and it's only when we do that, and again, part of the research of the book was kind of looking back over, history, Australian history, these kinds of things, and you start to see
Yeah.
where some of these pivotal decisions have, seem innocuous at the time, but take us down a 20-30 year path, and
Yeah,
suddenly we feel ourselves, corralled into a corner, and people that aren't even in this country making decisions about our day-to-day lives. It's crazy, it's
well, we're
absolutely
seeing
crazy.
it now with the fuel. I mean,
Yeah.
I think most of us have been hanging. We can feel like we've been here before when they were
Mm.
first talking about COVID, and we're
Yeah.
thinking, is this just going to blow over? Is Trump going to, say, oh, it's all fine? Apparently the strait is open now, and I'm
Yes.
just getting I'm just getting your link up, and you're just wondering if it's the same, and it feels the same.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels like there is a different agenda here than this,
Yes.
and the fuel's
Well,
going up.
someone very
Yeah.
wise once said to me, Michael, trust is very easy to lose, and much harder to rebuild. And we're
Yes.
really kind of living in that post-trust world right now, where, I know a lot of
Perfect.
people, thought these guys might, maybe not people that you would hang out with, in your free time, but no one thought in a million years that we'd be sold up the river to the point where, where, as I say, our fundamental freedoms and rights as Australians and just as people really just have been trampled on. And but
Absolutely.
and as I come from a corporate background, so I
Yeah.
worked in big, business. So I saw incompetence firsthand, and incompetence can explain a lot, but it doesn't explain everything. And it takes, it's kind of like the spark and then the fuel, and incompetence is kind of the fuel. And but the spark isn't always, clear as to what that is. And I was just literally, my mum had the news on in the other room, and you're looking at the front bench of the Australian government, whoever these people are, just feeling completely disconnected from any sense of shared reality with them. And
Yeah.
they're not feeling any pain from fuel prices going up. They're not feeling
No.
any existential threat that their liberty or their freedom is going to be inhibited in any way. But that core foundation of loss of trust, we what it feels like? It feels like we're kind of in mid metamorphosis. We've been through the initial shock, and we're still kind of in that. You're seeing it with the rise of Pauline Hanson and people like that. Of some people freaking
Yeah.
out, going, "We can't have Pauline Hanson around the place." And it's like, well, it's not about Pauline Hanson. It's about, you've got thousands, maybe millions of people now going, "Hang on a minute," hang on a minute, and people, and again, just applying basic logic like we spoke about with COVID, of going, well, hang on a minute, we had a fuel crisis, and no tankers had been stopped yet. They'd already decided that we were going to have one. So
yeah, that's right. Well, this is why I think we're getting. I just want to say then before we do that, I just want to say good morning to Shillets from the UK. G'day, brother. And Shillets is talking about that's his Twitter name. He's talking about England. I mean, we're watching England now like a dystopian movie nightmare.
Oh, it's nightmare fuel, Michael.
Those, I'm just going to put up the link again to your book. I've been reading this. You can hear how Russell speaks, incredibly clear and articulate and profound. And that's what the book is. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the book. Here's if you want to get it here, it's in the Banned Book Company. If you want to get a signed copy. And there's two reasons why writing is important now. they can't censor you. If you'll put this online, the Australian government is allowed, ASIO is allowed to go back through your feed and rewrite things without telling you. And so we can't trust them. And if we go back 3 or 4 years, I've been telling people at these gatherings, you look back, all your beautiful posts that you did 3 or 4 years ago, if they didn't, they're gone. They go deleted, deleted. So we're being memory hold as we speak. And so this is why we're getting behind authors. And if you're an author yourself, you're writing something, get in touch with us, because John Stapleton and I are pushing this to get these out. So this goes into your book collection and you hand it. And if it's got a written, if it's signed, then it gives it a little bit more value. And you can hand this. Yeah, I got the author to sign it. It's real. It's not a CIA plant or anything like this. And take it's about, what I love about it is the world is like this at the moment. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, what? And your book brings a clarity to that. And I think this is it, reclaiming mental freedom in an age of indoctrination. It's not just indoctrination, it's just being overwhelmed as well. Where and because of the hate speech laws are so vague, we're not even sure they're here now. People are defaulting to silence to stay safe. And here we are, you know.
So that's part of the, well, there's many facets to the design of the book and how I structured it and wanted to share. But really, for me, the one of the deeper intents is to give people confidence to be able to be pushing back on what they've been told. Because one of the challenges we're in the university age in many ways. You know what I mean? We're all funneled into university, and as anyone who's at, on the other side of that knows that, a lot of this stuff isn't really based in reality. It's based in academic theory, and we've got the high priests who are the professors and these people who get to dictate to us what's essentially what's true and what's not.
That's correct.
And sometimes it's only when you kind of just you tap it a little bit and you test, and it's like, hang on a minute, this isn't maybe as watertight as I thought. And and a lot of people, as they got limbically hijacked, they got thrown into a disarray. People trying to what are impossible decisions to be being made, and that paralysis was just very evident. And then a lot of people kind of just did their head in the sand and went, okay, well, we've done it now, so let's kind of just grind it out. But as I say, watching this Iran stuff kick off, and again, we don't need to go into geopolitics or anything like that, but as I say, this knee-jerk reaction to something that just on its surface just doesn't make any sense. But then hopefully, maybe we do. This is maybe the rumblings of people who are awake now. It's like, fool me once. But this time, like, I know you guys are a bunch of jokers, and I know, that this stuff doesn't really add up. And maybe I don't even know quite why yet. I just have a feeling in my bones that something's not quite okay. And and I know in times in my own life where I've been able to, or needed to stand in the truth, having that has been a huge resource for me to be like, no, hang on a minute, I do know what I'm talking about, and maybe I don't have all the answers, and I'm not an expert on the subject, but I have common sense, and I can apply that with the right information. And the second part was around linking that historically and giving people, the reminder that this isn't our first rodeo as a species. The human race has been through a hell of a lot in the time we've been on the planet, and
that's right.
And so much of technology has kind of short circuited that. One of my the chapter I spoke about at the launch is called "We Know More Than Our Ancestors," and this idea that just because we have technology, suddenly we're smart, and we know more than what a generation in the build up to the First World War, or what it was like living in the American Revolution or something like that. Humanity has been through incredibly tumultuous times before, and the biggest sin we can make is to not remember. It's like, lest we forget, right? That's something that stayed with me these last 5 years. Lest we forget. And really understanding what that sentence means. And we forgot. We forgot who we are, and we forgot what we stand for. And
I think values is a really interesting thing. The values, and to show you, I did a little rant recently. We had a water meter reader turn up, and he really loved his job. He wanted to find it, and he was 40. I think he was 39, 40 years old. And this is just, this isn't a professor's job. This isn't a doctor. This is a water reader. And anyway, he spent ages finding it. Then he wanted to talk. He's a lovely young guy, and I can't believe I'm saying that someone 40 is young, but I'm old now, so I'm allowed. And what he said was he and his wife are just in survival mode.
Yeah.
She works, he works, and they got a 2-year-old. His
Yeah.
hope is to buy a house,
Mm.
but it basically is very little chance that he can. But if he
Yeah.
does, the only way he can is not to have any other children, and she wants a child.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I said, well, you have to decide when you're older what you would prefer to have done. Spent your life paying off bricked off air or having a family.
Yeah.
And because you can't have both. But then I told him that when I came here in 1970, my father, working one job as a factory worker, paid off a mortgage in Glenelg, which was just near the beach, had a car, and we never wanted for anything. We went on holidays. Every long weekend we were off. A few weeks a year we were off. And Mum stayed at home and brought up the family. And now Albanese is going, oh, that time. They want to go back to that time. You feel like saying, yeah, well, what was wrong with that time? I mean, every car in the street, basically, we made. The clothes we wore, we made. The fridges, the TVs we watched, we made. So we made everything. We were thoroughly independent. And life was gentle. And in our memory, I know memory can take off the sharp edges, but basically, we were very different. We're now, with all our technology and everything, we're basically sitting on this gold mine of all these vast minerals, and we're beginning to starve on the top of it through total mismanagement. And to me now, surely Australian people can see that our politicians are not fit for purpose. It's no use voting; they're just not fit for purpose.
No.
You know.
Well, I guess it points to. And again, if I may, bring it back to the idea behind writing a book, it's kind of teasing these conversations out, because some of them are pretty uncomfortable as to what's actually happened. And because to me, the fabric of our society has been torn, and the social contract has been breached. And,
absolutely.
We had a situation here, Michael, last year with our glorious state government here who seized power with both hands and have no intention of giving it back. They were running out of ballots at polling booths down in Fremantle.
Wow.
It's like, how is that happening in Australia? Like, how is that happening? How are we here? And then I read yesterday, and it was, they had an inquiry, and it was local mismanagement, and the usual. And it's like, these aren't even serious people anymore, because, that was the deal. Australians worked hard, we sacrificed for our families. But there was an implicit guarantee in doing that there would be a reward for doing so. And then that would inspire other people to pick up, a heavy weight and carry it themselves. But I can remember even when I was turning 20 around the turn of the century, the writing was pretty much on the wall there. That's why I ended up in banking, because to get any serious job that was going to, match my skill set, it was like, well, I've got to go into this dark world of corporate and find out what it's all about, because, but we're now in a situation where I don't know if the connect between the government and the people is bridgeable at this point. No, I
don't think so. It's almost like, look, let's break down the Australian government to a relationship. Say we were in a relationship, and you betrayed me, went around and slept with a load of people, and I found out, or you gambled my money, or something else like that. The breach of trust would be so big. I might forgive you one, but when it kept going, I'm not going to forgive you anymore. I can't get back to being unified, because I'll never trust you. Earl, I just want to say your books, I was going to send you something. Your book's on its way, mate. We'll send you a tracking thing soon. Earl's in Texas. He won the first quiz show. But that's it. And the government now has betrayed us. We just don't trust them. No. We don't trust anything. And Albanese just keeps... Like, the other thing that mystifies me is they go, he's a puppet. Well, they really choose their puppets badly.
Yeah.
Because this guy acts like a puppet in like a Punch and Judy show. I mean, he's just... when he was in the... what was it? With the Muslims the other day in the... mosque. Sorry, I can't remember the name. He was in the mosque. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. It's like watching a sitcom. There he is, terrified, and yet these are the people he wouldn't mention after the Bondi shooting. I'm not
Yes,
saying that
and he's actively encouraged to move into our country. But
yeah, that's right.
if you run with it further, Michael, because again, it's kind of teasing out the line between what's a rational explanation, what's the zeitgeist, what's unfolding collectively, all these kinds of things. I remember watching there's a 21-year-old senator from South Australia who got in on the third wave of votes that they got in. And I remember saying to a friend, I was like, how many levels of system failure have had to happen for a 21-year-old to be thinking that he could be a senator?
Yeah.
And who's been encouraging them and who's been supporting them, and what actual mechanisms are in place where we can see someone on a TikTok walking in with a coffee going, "Hey everyone, I'm a senator." And by very definition, a senator is a supervisory role. It's an oversight. It's there to provide, balance through experience. And here we are with this kind of revolutionary push through, and again, some of it's the climate alarmism, all these kinds of things that have motivated these young kids. But we've kind of got a system that's wobbling at the seams because the fundamental principles are just completely disregarded and disrespected.
Yeah.
And again, once you throw in there's other countries putting fingers on scales and all sorts of things going on around the world at the moment. So we don't even really know what's real. We don't even really know what's real.
Look at, not only are we here now, about to run out of fuel, with it's already $3 a liter. It was we paid $60 just for a quarter of a tank on the bus last night, so we're running out of that. But basically, with all the mineral wealth going now, the people are coming out saying, it's all been signed away.
Yeah,
and yet you're thinking, if this doesn't anger the people enough to change, then what's it going to take?
Yes.
How much neglect and abuse and corruption are you willing to bear? Are you still going to vote Labor once your children are starving? Once you lose your house? Once you lose your job because they say, it's what? How much are you going to take? It's really an interesting question, because I feel now like, say yourself and all the people in the movement up to now, we're like veterans. These last few years, being ostracized, being ridiculed, all that stuff, it's been like a fire honing us, making us stronger. And yet here we are. And it's like I said about Carl apologizing. I doubt I'm going to see you on Channel 9 going, "Oh, I wish I'd taken the jab." Who was I to question the experts when actually, we're not going to do it. So we've got this. But I have to admit, I'm watching what's coming like a storm. And I'm not concerned for myself, but I am concerned for Australians. I'm concerned for the world. I think there is something, if it is what we think it is, these people have an agenda or a destination they want to reach. And a lot of us aren't in it.
Well, I think, as I say, there's a combination of things happening all at the same time. And what was
310? Wow, Christian.
When you were when I, in my process of going back over, what on earth have we just lived through? What has happened? And I remember we met up and we were in town when you first got here, and we're talking about having these succession of moments where you just left completely stunned to your bones, going, how is this even real? And it was a lady who was sharing that they could tell the type of vaccine that a baby had. Oh, sorry, the type of vaccine the father of a baby has had, because they could tell in the placenta, because that's from the sperm is responsible for the generation of the placenta and the formation of a baby. And the nurses could actually tell which vax the dad had based upon the damage to the placenta. And this lady was running around the hospital trying to shake people awake and saying, "Can you see this? Can you see this?" And she said the number of people who were like, yep, I can see it. I can see it. You don't understand. I can't lose my job. So they're still strangled by the same fear that had them doing it in the first place. But now we're in a situation where a lot of people, as you're saying, the guy with the water reader, they're just running and pedaling so fast, they don't have time to be organizing revolutions or anything like that. And to go back to what we were saying, that's never really been part of the Australian culture. It's never been part of who we are as a people. We haven't needed to turn up and protest. Now we found out even when we do, they don't listen anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I actually think this is I just want to show you some download videos. I just want to bring something up in a minute. I don't feel he didn't have any sense of power to him at all. The only power he had was to endure. And even when even when I told him that it used to be completely different, he yeah, it's extraordinary. You know, you're kind of looking for something, some spark of revolution, some sense that there could be another way. But it was just there. But I want to show you something, just what you said, where you get the wind taken out of your sails. You'd think by now nothing could do that to us. We're so cynical. We're war veterans. Nothing could shock us. But I just want to play you something now which shows the decline of our world's or the Western morality. Listen to this preacher in a church in the USA.
We're here.
Okay, listen to this.
If Jesus were here today, he would be a clinic escort, distracting women from the hatred of the protesters, or an abortion doula, holding women's hands and offering support and love as they end their pregnancies. And I expect he would have a stern word for self-righteous legislators who use abortion as a political issue rather than showing compassion.
I have to go on. Basically, she's saying if Jesus was here today, he'd be working in an abortion clinic.
Yeah.
That makes sense to her.
Yeah.
It goes against everything. It doesn't matter whether you're religious. It goes against everything that Jesus stood for. And you're just baffled. And it's like they're trying to bring in another morality. And I know Klaus Schwab said, I don't usually bring this up much, but Klaus Schwab said, don't debate them. That was his thing to his followers. Don't debate. And this is what we're seeing. They don't debate. So you're so articulate. If we got you on here with someone, they couldn't be a debate. They just go, oh, anti-vaxxer. Oh, Islamophobic. Oh, yeah, racist. Oh, you're just white privilege. That's it.
Yeah.
No actual debate because they're trying to establish or they're trying to create a new moral foundation, which is built on lies and hate and death and shame. Nothing nurturing for the human soul. And this is
otherwise
what I feel
known as communism, right? Can I share quickly, Michael?
That communists went so bad to believe a deity would come back and work in an abortion clinic, but who knows? You know, I tell you one thing that's interesting. Can I just tell you one interesting thing about communism? Because I've interviewed a lot of people that grew up in communism. In Kelmscott, there was one church in Perth where the police came in during Mass, halted the Mass to check people's vaccine passports.
Yeah, I remember.
When I talked to Polish people and other people who are in the Eastern Bloc, they said the party would have never done that. They might have got you when you came out of church, but they would have never interrupted a church. Wow. Don't you think that's interesting? So in Perth, where everything's nice and we actually were worse on that particular issue than the communists.
Well, yeah. And so to build on that, when I was going to say, the first time I was able to get out of WA, when they finally let the border down and all us plebs were allowed to back and travel, cattle class. And I went over to the UK. I had two friends, Michael, two separate friends in two different countries telling me they were looking forward to communism arriving. That was what they took from the COVID malarkey. That was one in England and one in the Netherlands. And that was part of the inspiration for the book, because I didn't have a good answer for that. I just never expected to be having that conversation. Yeah. And actually, when I was there this last time, we went over for the free speech rally in September, and visited the same friend. And my mum was with me, and I said, "Mum, that's the couch I was sitting on when he told me he wanted to be a communist." It's the one I almost fell off because I didn't know how to, you know what I mean? That wasn't a conversation I was expecting to have with a peer. And let alone that's what you've learned from this experience, is that you think this is good and that you want more of it. And
I think in England, Shillits, if you're there, you probably fell off your couch when he said that. I just want to put up the book again. So this is another book in the Bad Book Company, Radical Curiosity. We're going to get back to it in a sec. The link's here if you want a personal signed copy. But before we get there, you actually went over to the UK for the huge rally. You're the
I
first
did.
person I met have done that. Before we get to the book, could you tell us what was it like? What was the feeling? And was there really only 300 people at the rally?
It was one of the most remarkable experiences of my life, Michael. It was. I took
Wow.
my mum. She's just turned 80. So happy birthday, Mum, for last week.
Happy birthday,
And
Mum.
we had the conversation. For me, it was, I wasn't able to get across to Canberra when that all went down. Like my life wasn't in a situation where I could take the risk of running the border and not being able to get back and these kinds of things. But for me, it felt a little bit like a spiritual journey, I kind of felt like I was called there, having lived so much of my life in the UK and still having a great affinity for it. And then, as I say, watching on, just shell-shocked, just absolutely shell-shocked with how things are unfolding. And so it started at Blackfriars Station, and that's where the mustering point was. And down we marched along pretty much along the south side of London, and we got to Westminster Bridge, and someone was on their phone. They said, the police are saying there's 3.4 million people here, and everybody, there was a big cheer that went up, and then she said, and the Guardian are reporting 100,000, and and they burst out laughing. But then the Guardian went and published.
I don't know why I'm laughing at that.
They went and published an overhead shot of all the people, and it was more people than I think I'd ever seen. And to answer your question more directly, the feeling amongst people, Michael, the feeling amongst this is free people, and everybody there, and I remember saying that to my freedom people when I got back here. It's like, there's millions of us, guys. There's millions of us, and we all feel the same. And it's the kind of place where if you drop your phone, someone would have picked it up and given it back to you. And this is London, and interestingly, because as I say, my mum's, getting on a little bit, so we kind of called it quits at the bridge because there was too many people we couldn't get across, and so we walked back along the South Bank. And I didn't notice. Have you been to London before? The South Bank?
I did as a kid.
So the South Bank is like full spectrum living. Like there's people from all corners of the planet on the South Bank. There's food stalls and all the like. It was completely white English people.
Wow.
And it was the strangest sensation, because there was no pushing, no bustling. And to be honest, I didn't even notice, because there was, the full spectrum of people at the rally anyway. But there was a guy who was working on one of the rides, and I think he was Indian or something. And I just clocked in me. I was like, hang on a minute. And I looked around, and it was just a sea of just ordinary, generally middle-class white people, all just politely hanging out in their capital city. And it was just such a contrast from what I'm used to being.
Albanese would say, the scum of the planet.
Exactly. And it was just ordinary British people, Michael, that have seen what's going on. They can feel it dissolving through their fingers, and saying, no, enough. But interestingly, my journey around the UK, because I went back to see a lot of people that I knew, and hearing different perspectives, different people in different countries, literally different countries.
Good point,
and a lot of them bought into the fear. Oh, it was Tommy Robinson and all these right-wing crazies, and we didn't feel safe. And you couldn't have met a more gentle group of people you could ever imagine. But that said, you were talking earlier about what's it going to take. At the same time, I still had the friends that we stayed with. They're wide awake. They know what's going on. They wouldn't come with us. We can't be on on TV. What are my friends going to say? And so there's still this fear of actually standing up, and to be real, right? That fear's warranted. I remember you talking about it the other night. It's like, how do you get people into the freedom movement? Yep, you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose all your friends, everything you've worked for. The future's uncertain, but we're free.
No, I used to say, what was the thing? I used to say that at the Melbourne rally early on. People used to be going, why don't they wake up? Why don't they wake up? And I go, well, to be honest, our sales pitch is lose your house, lose your family, lose your friends, lose your car, maybe lose your job, get a piece of cardboard, write freedom on it, come down and get pepper sprayed. And they're like,
totally.
Good luck,
where do I sign? It's
And
but,
so,
I think what we're saying, though, like you were talking about being veterans of this, my deep fear is this is coming for everybody. We're just the ones that jumped off the cliff first.
No, that's right.
We're the ones that jump first. And let's say I'm 45 now, Michael. I don't have anything in my life that I would conventionally expected it to be like. I had no idea that 6 years ago when my brother-in-law said, what do you think about this COVID thing? And I was like, oh, it sounds like a pile of nonsense to me. That it would have fundamentally rewired the entire world. Like that was just beyond my I think I
Yeah.
shared with you, when I used to work in banking, I used to get the stuff that the senior guys didn't want to do landed on my desk as exec assistant. I saw a pandemic plan stuff back in 2011, 2012, and it all sounded like
Wow.
nonsense then. It sounded
Yeah.
crazy then. It's like you can't lock down. Like, we couldn't have just locked down our own business area, let alone try and lock down a city, let alone a county or a country or the world.
Yeah.
And so for the first part of this, I was just like, this is madness. This is just absolute
Yeah.
madness. It's going to fall apart under its own lack of logic and impossible, attainment. You just can't do this, and which we learned, right? You can't, and they didn't. All they did was kill millions of people. That's pretty
Yeah.
much, and destroy many more lives, and put in jeopardy the future of humanity. It's pretty dark. When you
Yeah, it is.
when you really
We've been waiting 6 years for the next, and we've been thinking it's another virus. They did monkeypox, they did a sloth virus that just never got off the ground, and they did all these things. I had a young person tell me the other day, goes, no one talks about it, no one cares. But now they're here with this, and now they're talking lockdowns, and we're staying at home, and $40 worth of fuel. Shillet's here from the UK. Rationing plans have been suggested to be put in place, already limiting fuel to £30 a day. So maybe that's like $50-$60. $40 here for us is not even a quarter a tank of fuel. And I'm in Perth, and Perth's a car city.
It is.
You need a car to get around. It's so spread out. The shops even have parking in front of them. You just drive in, get your thing, drive out. The whole thing is, so it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what happens when.
Do you think also, Michael, it's interesting watching the tentacles of this all kind of come together? Because just as you were saying that about, $30 a day, this jumps us straight into digital ID, because the obvious question is, well, how do they know? And digital so you've got the sort of the hive mind of this corporate beast that's trying to enslave the world. This is why you got Tony Blair out there going, we need digital ID, even though it's his son that's, running the company that wants to put it, all this kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But you can see how their mind works. Their mind is, we've got to control everything. That's our job, is to control you. And that's your classic left versus right in politics, and it's obviously a little bit blurry these last 30 years. But essentially, the conservatives or the libs or whatever are, you go, you do you, and play by the rules, and we hope you succeed, and we'll compete with you on all these kinds of things. Whereas the left is more, well, it's our job to think of the collective. And so the pathway into this has been through kindness and people thinking that they're doing the right thing and thinking that they're being compassionate to a boatload of hard done by refugees that are. And now we've got the UK, where they've got no-go zones around their cities because you've got all these military-age men that have just been imported and are just hanging around, harassing young girls.
Not just hanging around. We have there's some politician came out the other day, claimed 1 million women have been raped by Pakistani rape gangs. 1 million.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
1 million. That's like more than all of Tasmania. It's like everyone, and no one says anything. And then the politicians get together and they don't want a. They don't want to vote. They don't want an investigation.
And they can't say anything either, right? Because the admission actually pulls out the cornerstone of the foundation of their whole worldview and their whole structure.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this person's, they're still a person too. It's like, yes, but they believe something fundamentally different to you. And a lot of them don't like you, as hard as that is for people to hear. There are cultures out there that don't approve of our lifestyle. They don't like us. And so there's a growing up almost, this growing up through this of, we just can't be nice to everybody because, well, one, it's not our responsibility, but two, often we end up paying the price in the long run because, we're in our own, like Albo found out last week, you're in your own country being disrespected. And like, I don't know about how you thought about that, Michael,
because I had to do an Uber recently twice to go to this thing because we just thought it might be cheaper than the bus, and parking the bus would be a pain. And I brought it up with both of them. Both of them were Muslims, but they're moderate Muslims. And one of them actually said to me, that was a disgrace. He was a guest, and it goes against Islam. If you have a guest, even if it's an enemy, if you have a guest, you treat them as a guest. So I'm not anti-Muslim at all. I think we're being pushed. It's very easy. Like if, say, we went to a march somewhere, there'd be a load of people marching, and then maybe you do have the Nazi boys at the front, or you do have these other people, just a small handful causing a ruckus. They're the ones that get filmed, and that stains the whole crowd. Where in actual fact, the whole crowd, like you said, is just this. And the majority, this will get me in a lot of trouble, but I actually believe the majority of Jews, the majority of Muslims, the majority of Africans, and not all of them, but the majority just want to live a peaceful life. They just want to get on. But there is all the ideologies, all the wars, everything that's ever caused humans misery, I think comes from the top down. There's money to be made from war. There's control to be done by keeping us divided. The media loves pushing division because we're easier to control. Where in actual fact, the ones we got to fight aren't our brothers and sisters who might have a belief in a different God, but it's whoever's bringing this down. Whoever's this. It's time, because look, I remember a Muslim guy came up to me with his family on the steps of Parliament when we were first marching. He sought me out because he was watching me. And he said, and what did he say to me? He said, I want to tell you something. We're going into a future where you have a choice. You can live on your knees or die on your feet. And that's it. And he was in the freedom movement from there. I had another Muslim woman in the whole regalia, the hijab and everything, came up to me in Adelaide while we were protesting outside a vaccination clinic with this huge sign of vax injuries. And she came up to talk to me, and she said, you know what? I'm not allowed to hug anyone. I'm not allowed to hug a man, but I'm hugging you. So and it was a beautiful moment, but she was so happy to be there. So I sometimes feel like in reality, we're pawns. And we are pawns. We're not really going to know what the king and queen or whoever is above us, what's actually happening. I hear all these theories, but everything is sort of theories. And I'm still to truly understand what's going on. The only thing I can understand is that either the rich have got so rich that they want the planet for themselves. I mean, this will sound like a conspiracy, but what if they've cracked longevity? There was 20 years ago, there was all these experts working on making mice live longer, and they cracked it. They were making mice live 2 or 3 times their normal lifespan. And then a Russian oligarch bought all the scientists. You never hear it anymore. What if there is a small group of really extraordinary rich humans who've cracked it? I don't know. Maybe they've decided they're going to redesign the planet. That would make as much sense as anything else. We don't know. All we know is that our beautiful country it's just basic. It's basic. We should be taxing the minerals that go out of the country. We should be wealthy. We should be using our oil, which is clean. We should have the cheapest fuel, and we should be a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. And instead, we're heading into an orchestrated or a manufactured depression while our politicians go, like this. That's what I do know because I can see it, Yeah.
So I think
can I ask you just before we go on, it's just to go back a bit. How did you get into breath work? And how did you start a business with it? Just out of interest.
So I got into breath work 15 years ago now. It was burnout. It was really my pathway into breath work. And I was doing the corporate rat race thing in the corporate world. Yep. Yeah. And so I really just reached breaking point and living so far away from my family. And, I joke at my workshops, Michael, I said, I went out to put a dent in the world and the world put a dent in me. And so, it was a moment of real desperation and surrender and falling back, falling into something that I had no idea what it was, but I ended up kind of moonlighting. I used to work in, with the suit and tie during the day and board meetings and those kinds of things. And then the evenings I would, see clients and help people to very, very different worlds. But it opened me up spiritually, it opened me up to there's more than this, and because I've experienced it and the people that I work with experience it all the time. But what I'd always wanted to do was be able to ground that into a practical way that didn't overwhelm people thinking that it was woo-woo or crazy or all those kinds of things. And so I ended up staying in the UK to master my craft, and living there, I was able to travel around Europe and over to North and South America and meet a lot of pretty remarkable people. But I knew when I came back to Australia, certainly the type of breath work I do, I was going to be doing it largely on my own. And but yeah, interestingly, you know, I've found myself isolated pretty much within the breathwork community as well over all this kind of stuff, which is just completely blowing my mind. Completely blowing my mind. And you know, some of the most hardcore folk.
We
Hey?
forget those things. We forget
Yeah.
those things, you know. I remember interviewing in Horsham this single mother who didn't want to take it, who'd made a pact with her mother that if it got injured or died, her mother would look after the kids. Her mother wasn't going to take it. And the reason she was going to take it is she worked in a chemically free, that's how they sold themselves, health store.
Right.
They were against all vaccinations, but for some reason they were going to force their staff to take this one.
Wild. It's wild.
And she got the job. She'd left another job to get a job here because she wanted to work chemically free, because I think one of her children had been injured by a vaccine. She wasn't going to take it anymore. So she was an anti-vaxxer through pain because she'd seen her child injured. And that's why she was proud to work here. And now, because she lost a job, she didn't know how she'd survive. She was going to, they were forcing her to portray her own values to support her children.
And I guess, and this is, you know, we're talking about your book. Do you know what I mean? About teasing out some of these stories that so many people just have no idea. Like, I know there's a large section of the Perth population that don't even realize there's a problem right now. You know what I mean? Like, there's a big section of people that are like, well, you know, government are bastards. What are you going to do? Let's get on with our lives. And they don't have a sense of this deep violation that's taken place, and this gross abuse of power. And it's you know what I was going to share with you? One of the best memes I've seen lately is we're living through the hardest part of the 2075 history exam. Because people are going to be studying us like they're studying Nazi Germany or studying communist Russia, these kinds of things. People are going, how did you end up there? Like, how did this happen when it's so obvious now? But you know, to really having lived through, they really kind of pulled the noose tight on us, and they cut off the information flow, and you know, they bribed big pharma bribed the companies with adverts, and then the government gave them indemnity, all these kinds of things, all that web. But you know what I was going to say, you know, we were talking earlier about you know, like the Muslim situation and these kinds of things. I think one of the biggest casualties of this whole period of time has been the inability to handle nuance. You know, and it's crashed us in this, you know, and part of the woke mindset has got this, it's this universalizing principle of, well, we're all just the same in the end. And so everything has to collapse into sameness. And
there's a question for you there before it goes. This is Jason, one of our constant commentators.
You better to learn to hold your breath. But yeah, the ability to, you know, for us to hold, and I think this is for me where the individualist side comes from, because for me, I'm very much judge someone by the content of their character. You know what I mean? And because I've got people from all walks of life in my life, and I've never really thought of any of them as being fundamentally different.
Yeah,
but there's always nuance, you know, even within the Muslim world, there's infinite factions, and the Jewish world is the same, the Christian world is the same. And so labeling everybody into
and the trans people, there is a mix in everything. You're totally right.
And so the problem is they try, this is when government gets in the way, right? Because government then tries to legislate, and legislate by definition gives an absolute line one way or the other, which is, and that's what we've seen, all this MAID stuff coming through, Michael, is nightmare fuel. It's nightmare fuel.
It's insane.
And it's under the compassion. We're compassionately helping people who are suffering in their life. It's like, well, what caring, conscientious person wouldn't want that, you know?
And then we're selling their organs. G'day, Simon. We're selling their organs to help other people. Help. It's the banality of evil. It really, truly makes you wonder, is there a devil? And
well,
I do one thing. I really want to come back to your book, but we're talking today about Epic. We've been having a few people. We did a beautiful interview today with a young guy. It's going to go up later. And some other people came around for a chat. And the incredible thing about Epic, I was there, and I think it's the same for the march you were in. I know, or I totally believe, that even though Big Pharma could have $1 billion marketing campaign, the government could help them, MSN, every reporter in Australia could back it. even if they put all that energy into trying to get people to come to Canberra from all over Australia to cross closed borders, they would never get 1 million people to come to Canberra to get the booster, ever. They came there for freedom, but they were called there. I was on the gate. I was there. People were saying, I had to come. I had a calling. I had to come. And it makes me think, what if there is a God? So God said, come to Canberra, and we came. But as I was saying, the other side, government, big farmers, they couldn't achieve it.
No.
And yet there was nothing. There was no Instagram posts. There was no this. There was just this feeling. And so there's great hope in the world. Really, I really feel that there's a darkness and a light. And at the moment, the darkness is here and the light's fighting back. And the darkness is now coming in for another attack. And people have got to say, well, what sort of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in one that's conducive to the human soul? And the only way you're going to do that is to stand your ground, or you're going to try hold on to your little crumbling patch of dirt and head into the darkness, and it's going to be dark.
So one of the ways I survived lockdown and being kicked out of society and all those kinds of things, and which points towards the book, is I ended up learning astrology. And astrology for me was as far away from breathwork as breathwork was to banking, if that makes sense. It was another big leap out into the unknown, and it was through a set of circumstances that I was forced to open my mind. And so I included it in the book as almost a challenge towards the end of people to say, well, how comfortable I am just dancing with ideas that I maybe don't fully believe in or understand or whatever. But if I may, from an astrological perspective, Saturn, the planet Saturn with the ring, that represents the three-dimensional reality. And Saturn in astrology is known as the old devil, Saturn, Satan.
Wow, okay.
And so it's this idea of, and what we're seeing, you talk about the longevity, is people are actually enslaving themselves, because on one level we are enslaved to this three-dimensional reality. And we go through we're born, we grow up, it sucks, becoming an adult, and then we die, we go through the cycle of life. And what we did with COVID was we put all our chips on the material side of things. And when, okay, well, the only way to solve this problem is because there's something structurally wrong with you that we've identified and we can update and tweak.
Yeah.
That's dancing with some pretty dicey existential reality when you think about it. And that's really the scientism of the world, is we can measure it, explain it, see it, touch it, feel it. And that's how we know it's real. Whereas this has forced a lot of us. And so again, astrologically speaking, the nebulous of all life is the sun. It's the light of ourselves.
Yeah.
And as you've seen, when you meet people, the light shines through people when they let go of the fear, the Saturnian fear of worrying about losing our stuff, because, we realize that we are eternal anyway. And that doesn't mean, and then again, you go back to, this is the teachings of Jesus, right? He did it the really hard way as an example for us all. That I am more than this material world, and it doesn't matter how much pain and suffering and injustice is inflicted upon me. If I can connect with that light that I am, then I'm eternal. That's essentially the Christian message, right? And so I think there's but we're seeing, is there a devil? Yeah, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them, and that's how they perceive the world. They straight up, see it as a problem to be solved, a thing to be fixed. And medicine got arrogant because it was like, well, look at it, look what happened with you with your heart transplant. It's a miracle. It's not a transplant, but your surgery. It's a miracle. Modern medicine is a miracle.
It is absolutely incredible what they can do. Even Dr. Paul Oosterhuis said that. They work on the plumbing. They're great plumbers. Yeah. But this is something different. I just want to bring up before we talk about your book, I just want to bring up something really quickly, because this kind of relates to you. Well, the deep critical thinker has become the misfit of the world. This is not a coincidence. To maintain order and control, you must isolate the intellectual, the sage, the philosopher, the savant, before their ideas awaken people. So let's talk about your book.
Okay.
When did you decide to write it? And when you wrote it, was it hard, or were you actually, did it just pour out?
It poured out. I actually had a book in the pipeline that I was been working on around breath work. And that was how, when I got into astrology, the whole idea was fusing the two together and creating something and it is very original and unique. but for whatever reason, it wasn't coming out of me. And my biggest spiritual lesson of this, Michael, is I don't get to do what I want to do. That's not how life works. We do what we have to do. And
that's
so
right.
for me, I had before I became a breath worker, I'd done a whole bunch of study around neurolinguistic programming, these kinds of things. So, I'd always had it in me that I was going to be writing a book at some point. And then the idea came to me. I actually got the inspiration. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a gentleman called Rupert Sheldrake. And he's a scientist, he's a biologist, and he's got papers on things like morphic resonance and all sorts of out there. But he's a legit scientist. I think he's Cambridge or something like that. Anyway, he had a TED talk that got banned, and it was his book is called The Science Delusion. And what he did was he went and explored these fundamental tenets of science, and lo and behold found that the things that were held as absolute fact were maybe a little bit more fragile than. And then when he poked the bear, because he started asking questions like, what is gravity and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And he was an intellectual hero of mine, and that was kind of the breakthrough idea that I kind of had, is what's going on here is people are believing something like it's real.
Yeah.
But they haven't necessarily either tested it or it's been challenged because it's socially reinforced in our society.
Yeah.
And so that on the back of trying to figure out, because the other question, so I think it was when the mandates came through, and then when I had two friends tell me want to be communists, I was like, I'm out of answers here as to how to explain how you're thinking. And I don't know what is going on. And so that's what popped into my mind. And as I saw Rupert talk a couple of times, and he's just, he's a hero of mine. And so on the shoulders of giants, right? You pave the way, how the people pave the way for you. But I thought there was an incredible sort of social question to be asking around this. And so I defined the terms at the beginning of the book. So there's a dogma, which people understand, but a mogma, which is a modern dogma. And like all dogma, we don't often realize the prisons that we're in until we try and leave them, or they kind of exert their influence on us. And so that started that process of how do I kind of turn this into some sort of semblance. And then each chapter is, I came up with these sort of 12 core modern dogmas, and then, neurolinguistically broke them down and provided people evidence to help them, regain some sort of footing and sense-making capability amidst all of the crazy, because so much is just assumed and implied that we should know these things. And we kind of saw the very final end of, well, if you're not going to get a vaccine, you must be stupid. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that was kind of how we got intellectually corralled.
You don't trust the science. You don't trust
the science. And ironically, the science became the biggest belief system of all for people who would mock and laugh at Christians who, when it wanted to go to church on a Sunday. And it's like, well, I'm busy trusting the science. And it's like, well, I don't think we've just defined either of those terms, trust or science, as to what those things actually mean.
Well, science itself is question. Science itself is another word for that's all it is. Questions, 100%. Questions. Yeah. So how can you trust a question?
Yes. Yeah. It was and I think this is where, like, what you were getting at, it actually sort of gently points us towards, there's a lot about this world that we don't know. And so much of the comfort that we lived in prior to all this mess was the comfort of certainty that we did know how things worked, and that we did know how things operated. And certainly for me, as I say, if I was a betting person when this all kicked off, I would have been, there's no way this is going anywhere. This is ridiculous. And then to see an entire society succumb to the, and it just never occurred to me. I remember people talking about it as a kid about, your freedom is the most precious thing. But it's like, that's like telling a fish in the ocean that the water is the most precious thing. You don't notice it. You don't notice it until someone scoops you out and puts you in a fish tank, And
that's right. That's right. Can I just do something? I want to do this here. We came across the nullable, right? Which we might not be able to get across. I just want to leave this up here for a second. And now the nullable cliffs, we always stop at the nullable cliffs. They're like 250, 300 meters high. But the nullable used to be an ocean. And I've been looking up to how long it's gone. They say 14 million years ago, it was covered in water. Wow. But if you go to the Nullarbor Cliffs, which are dry, it is covered in these, I don't know if you can see it,
Yeah.
these little shells.
Yes.
Now, these shells are fragile. The surface of the nullarbor is just covered in them. You can crush it with your finger. So you telling me that this little fragile shell is 14 million years old and it's just been sitting on the desert. No animal is treading on it. No Aboriginal, no car, no anything, no storm. This and all the other millions of shells that are untouched are 14 million years old. It just, why haven't they gone underground? Why haven't they solidified? Why aren't they like rocks? There's suddenly in my older age now, I'm questioning everything, evolution,
Totally.
That we took for granted because I love science, but now you're going, well,
yeah. How much is assumption? There was all the
Hey,
stuff that came out. I mentioned it in the book around all the they got stuff called LiDAR, being able to detect all these structures underneath the pyramids and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it's straight up in their own language. It can't be denied. And so we're kind of in the, well, where do we go to now? We're seeing by your own tools, we're seeing something that we can't explain, but your model doesn't give us space for something we can't explain.
Yeah.
And so that's this smashing through that's happening for us as individuals, but that I think is what's coming, this collective awakening that's coming is, this real acknowledgement that a lot of what we've been taught is, how could you say it's contextual at best, and but this shift into absolutism and lazy thinking and it's not even lazy thinking. It's like, when you go to university, like these are the fundamental tenets of, we just assume this is real and then we begin from there, whereas no one's actually gone back into the, well, how do we actually get here in the first place? And a lot of these were there's things like there's water damage on the Sphinx that they can't explain. It's like, so what is that? What is that? And no, you're a conspiracy loon. It's like, serious question. What is it? You're the scientist.
Yeah.
What is it?
And the stones, like there's millions of them. There's, there's some of them 60, 70 tons.
Yeah.
Get off. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe,
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah.
I mean, surely one of us would be sitting there. Why are we doing this?
Yes.
I mean, I'm starving. You really want me to build? Why?
Yeah.
There's not even any windows in it. Why?
Yes.
It's just these are things that I think that we're waking up, and maybe this is the journey we're on.
Maybe.
Well, coming back to your book, though, why I've had you on is I think you're a very clear thinker. I'm not saying that you have answers, but I'm saying you're very
Definitely not.
clear. No, you're a clear thinker.
Yeah.
I think
Thank you.
Arrogant to pretend or to believe you have the answers. I get a lot of people coming up. I know exactly what's going on. I think we have theories. We have very little evidence. I mean, even the Epstein files are like, wow. But when you actually calm down and look at them with a critical mind, you realize I haven't seen anything I could take anyone to court with. Like I even saw images. Something came up the other day. Look, here's Trump with these little girls, and he's kissing these little girls, and he's smiling at the camera. So someone's taking this picture, and there he is with this little. I'm thinking, if this guy was at a pedophile party, now I'm not a pedophile, but I'm pretty sure that pedophiles don't want their picture taken with little kids by
100%.
some random stranger with a camera that could post it. I'm pretty sure they destroy that camera and probably you.
Yes.
Things don't make sense. I'm very interested in looking both ways now, what the government's shoving down and what's coming up from our community, because who's to know we're not having CIA or anything else plant crazy ideas to make us look nuts.
Well, there's lots of questions about Bondi, right? There's lots of questions about Bondi that don't add up. And that's just a reality, and look at what happened to Charlie Kirk over in America. Like that's
Absolutely.
one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my life. And yet it's still rumbling on that and we're all forced to exist in this make-believe world that isn't real. And
let's be honest, look at his wife. I'm sorry, but Erica comes up and she does these things and there's no tears. No. And if anyone's had a relationship, you know that sometimes someone breaks up with you, they're pretending to be sad, and you look at them and going, you actually got no tears in your eyes, it's like crocodiles. So here's someone who's watched her husband being shot, and she's just doing this. It's almost like bad amateur theater acting.
Yeah.
That she's like, you're thinking, really, and there's all these strange question. It's like the whole world is theater. I feel like I'm stuck in a Netflix episode, you know, and they go, okay, it's getting bored now. Okay, let's have a Iran war and we'll have a fuel crisis. Let's have a pandemic. Let's have this. Let's have 9/11. It's like one crazy thing after another, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I touch upon it, and without giving away the ending of my book, I touch upon it in the epilogue. And again, it's some of it's from my own personal experience, but I was in the UK in 2016 when Brexit came through.
Okay.
And I had no idea about it. I thought I did, you know. I was, as I say, I thought I understood the world until something presents itself that you don't understand.
Yeah.
And then Trump got in shortly after that. And so the media was just in free fall at that point. They were in free fall because they couldn't they could neither understand nor explain what they'd seen.
Yeah.
And I experienced this increasing hysteria, and for me was like I kind of that was kind of, I joke with people, that was kind of like that kicked me out of the matrix when that happened, because I was like, I'm clearly wrong about a bunch of things. You know, a couple of my core assumptions about how things are just not true, but I don't really know what they are. And so that got me onto
very brave.
I remember watching Tommy Robinson's talk, and he did a talk at the Student Union.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in my room in Edinburgh and watching this talk and being like, oh my goodness, nobody that I know knows this. You know, like he's telling the truth. And he was mocked and belittled. He was on Jeremy Paxman, just called him, you know, all the names under the sun. And but he was speaking a truth that was more horrible than anyone could actually wrap their heads around, and certainly didn't know how to deal with. And then I found out about Trump, you know, and I was like, because I was in the UK, and it was like, well, he's just this lunatic game show host and he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
And then you find out, well, actually, there's a whole side of America that have been long suffering, basically since JFK got blown away. Yeah. They don't trust their government. And then, as imperfect as he might be, this guy kind of rocks up and galvanizes the working class in a way that the intellectuals just simply can't understand. Yeah, and let alone the British intellectuals who still think they rule the world, you know? And so we had this whole beast kind of surfacing from underneath the surface. And I say, it's kind of just my nature. I do my best to remain intellectually consistent to the best of my ability. I still obviously get things wrong, but I can just remember that was my foundational, because after Brexit, I remember speaking to my brother in Sydney, and I was like, oh, it's all going to go away. I woke up the next morning and they were like, Britain's voted for Brexit. And then on my way to work, I had to pull over on the side of the road because David Cameron was on the radio resigning. And it was just like,
I remember that.
What just happened? Like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And
that was like
I was in the banking ecosystem. No one understood.
That was like The Voice over here. Yeah. I really thought the way they were marketing it, they were just going to have a landslide win. And so we were going to do a show at 8 o'clock because I knew the counting wouldn't be gone. And when we switched on at 7 to set up the show, we'd already won, and it'd be resoundingly defeated. And you're thinking, oh, wow.
And to that point,
just to go back just to what you said, though, where you, you know, basically you've changed your thinking. That's actually quite brave. Most people get stuck in Storey and nothing will change it unless it's, you know, it's something terrible. But but that is growth. You have to challenge your own misconceptions, because that's how you grow. You're, okay, I was wrong, you know.
Yeah.
And well, and this is in a sort of a search for greater truths.
Yes.
You know?
Well, this was the lead up, you know, and because my theory, for whatever it's worth, I happen to think it's true, that COVID got released to get rid of Trump. You know, that was part of their whole. That was the whole plan.
And they said that.
And
because not come out now, it was supposed to come out later, but they were so terrified of Trump they released it early.
Exactly, they accelerated their plans, and that's actually what's going to collapse them, because they tried to do the evil too quickly. And but I remember, because you were saying before about us not really knowing what's going on. I remember when the election got stolen in November. Yeah, and you know, he was winning, and then the next day he just wasn't. And it was like, you know, Joe Biden got more votes than anyone in history, and yet he's doing these talks with people in these little COVID circles. The whole thing was just insane. But what was even more insane was how the media then covered it up. And I think the media has so much responsibility in this mess, Michael, because they're the ones who have gaslit the crap out of everybody. Yeah. You know, they're the ones who, you know, and they simply don't know what's going on. And Australian people have we've been held to ransom. We've been held You know what I mean? Like they just squeeze the information pipeline and
Yeah.
and
I
you know,
mean,
and then
giving our gas
that was
away for free.
yeah.
There is no logical sense.
No.
If we had a cafe, imagine we had a cafe with partners, and you came in, you found, why haven't we sold anything? Oh, I've given it away for free. I'm sure, how many? Oh, well, the first, I like to give about 1,000 coffees away free
Yeah.
today because I'm sure it'll come back to us somehow. You just wouldn't do it. Are you kidding? But I want to get back to with your astrology, where you talk about astrology.
Yes.
The moon, I spend a lot of time on the road now. And one thing Kelly and I love doing is if we ever get a chance, you're near an ocean, whether it's somewhere as remote as the Nullarbor or anywhere. We lived in Melbourne, it's, before they move us on, and from the bus, and you watch the tide coming in, and it's the moon, as far as I know. The moon is, and you watch the tide coming in, you're thinking, what we're actually watching is an amount of water we cannot comprehend, to how much water is just moving on the planet back and forth. It might only move a little bit, but it's an impossible number to conceive, a way to conceive. And the moon's doing that. So if the moon can move the oceans like that, how could it not affect us? And the same with the planets and stuff. How these planets like Saturn and Jupiter hold planets on them. Not planets, what they call the moons, as we hold the moon, as our Earth holds the moon. So how could we possibly not be affected to some degree by these things? So I'm very open to all things like that.
Yeah, well, for me, it's it speaks to an interconnection of life. It connects us with our history, our ancestors as well. You think the Greeks and the Romans were talking about this stuff, the Babylonians. But one of my waking moments, just you can see the window outside here. And again, surviving lockdown and isolation, and I went and bought myself a telescope off Facebook Marketplace.
Oh wow!
And so so astrology and astronomy are pretty much not exactly the same thing, but it's very, very similar. And and I was sitting out. I just prompted my mind when you were talking then, and I remember looking at my telescope and I could see the moons on Jupiter.
Wow!
And I had this kind of like, whoa, what is that? And we're in the world of AI, so I was able to ask blah 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 blah, and it was that connected me. So I mentioned Galileo in the book at the beginning of the book as the ultimate heretic, because he discovered that in the 1600s, and that discovery of that through the technology of the telescope, shattered our previous understanding as to what how the universe actually worked. And so for me, learning to watch the movement of the moon, and you guys will see it on the travel, if you start to tune into the phases, you can see it open up, the new cycle, the peak, and then it closes off and around we go again. And so it's actually got this tool of, deepening our intuitive relationship with the world around us. And as you say, these celestial bodies that you can see how they influence things. And it's extraordinary.
Like you're 45, I'm 60. Humans have this incredible relationship with the moon. I mean, when the moon comes up full, I should be bored shitless with it. I've seen the moon every night of my life, so it's full moon, but you're not. It takes your breath away. You look at it with wonder. This is it. It's the same with, say, when you're around a campfire and you have a fire. We have all these gadgets that can do doom scrolling and everything, and you can sit there looking into the flames, and you're just mesmerized.
Totally.
It's the world is actually
spiritual.
Beautiful.
I've
got a saying that there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, this is hell," and I got a saying that, well, if it is, someone used heaven to paint it, and
totally.
and it's we live in this great beauty, and one thing I want to talk about, you talk about in your book, is how the algorithms want to keep us enraged because that drives content. Could you talk about that? And then how you come about how we deal with that? Because I know sometimes I take a break for a few days from doom scrolling, and you feel like a dried sponge that's had water poured back into it.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about your thoughts about that and how we're being controlled now?
Well, I had this funny image because, again, if we if we go back to, you know, when the election got stolen in 2020 and the ensuing kind of media, whatever they did after that, you know, and that's when the censorship really kicked in. And I had this vision of this bunch of nerdy, you know, Californian kids sitting in a room in Silicon Valley, basically getting to decide what the rest of us see, you know. So it kind of got pushed through their woke ideology, and we saw it, you know, it was obviously, you know, Facebook, if you mentioned the vaccine, gone, you know, and if you dared to, you know, step on one of the taboo topics of the time, gone. And so we're seeing an extraordinary, you could say, lack of distribution of power. You know, these guys, and again, whatever people think about Facebook and how they came to be and all these kinds of things, we kind of ended up putting ourselves in our own prison of interconnection. You know, that was like the shadow of us all being interconnected, is that we can also now be controlled. And I think a lot of us maybe didn't see that being a serious problem until, you know, they turned the screws on us and tightened us. And but it's also, you know, like we're saying about the, you know, the whole idea of nuance, is remembering that, you know, corporations employ people to figure out what makes us tick. You know, there's entire industries built around hacking the human psyche and getting us to, you know, they study us, and, you know, in many ways,
and this is not new.
No.
Only this year, I found out that Santa Claus was an invention of Coca-Cola to sell Coke to Americans in the winter. That's why he's red and
hijacked our
white.
culture. Yeah.
But they made him up. They say they briefly got him, but they actually made up Santa Claus. So when we grow
as he currently looks, you mean? Yeah.
No, the whole concept of him. He never existed until Coke created him. I couldn't believe it. I researched into it. It was a marketing campaign. They just couldn't sell Coke in the summer. So they made up this man who comes and goes and lives in South Pole. It's an advertising campaign. It's like diamonds. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. Diamonds are forever. Marketing campaigns, actually loads of diamonds, actually withhold them to create scarcity.
False
so
economy.
We're wrapped in these stories that we think are real. But of course, you're going to go and share Santa Claus because you get presents. Someone jumps in, gives you stuff. Why would you not believe that beautiful lie? You know? When actual fact, the story is someone lands a vehicle without an engine, without seatbelts, on your roof, pulled by a load of feral deer, flying, and then breaks into your house, eats your cookies and milk, and leaves you a present. So, but it really shook me, because I thought, my God, really, what is real?
Well, that's it, right? And you remember when we first spoke, and you said, you know, you thought Australia's gone. It's like, what is Australia? It's an idea. You know, it's an idea. It's an idea that we all share. We all hold in our minds, hopefully in our hearts as well. But like we're talking, this is a social contract. We can walk around and basically know that people aren't gonna try and steal our stuff, and you know, we can coexist together if we subscribe to a similar set of ideas. And I don't know if it's a case of technology has kind of just outpaced our wisdom. That might be you know, or we need the experience to be able to learn from it, because by definition it's new and we don't really understand what it is. Maybe that's part of it too.
This is why I keep telling people now, you and I are in the first generation in human history where the future is behind us.
Yeah.
We're catching up with it. You get on AI, they've done this, done that. It's like fatigue, like catching up with the future. We're the first, you know. Extraordinary position to be in, you know.
It is.
And you
can't
possibly keep up with everything that's happening. You just can't do it. You know?
And to be honest, Michael, that's the great betrayal, right? Because again, you know, I hang out in the freedom circles, and people can be a little bit snide, and you know, people are asleep, blah blah blah. It's like, I just don't think people can grasp the depth of the betrayal that's actually happened. You know, I think of my mom. My mom's dependent on those news sources, and they lied to her. And her realizing that they were lying to her was an extremely traumatic process for her to go through, for exactly that reason. She's got a few decades on me. So that level of unthinking and questioning, you know, the whole idea of a journalist is they're supposed to tell you what's going on. That's their job, to do that in an impartial way. And they failed. And not only did they fail not being impartial, they lied. They openly lied to us. And I know that from some of my own relationship history. You know, betrayal is not an easy experience to move through.
There's a famous, is it There's a famous story, an ancient story, and betrayal is the worst thing that can happen.
That's Dante's
And
Inferno. Yeah, that's at the base. It's the base
yeah,
level because it's the
yeah,
worst.
that's right.
It's the worst thing,
Yeah.
and that's what our politicians haven't figured out yet. Is they
No.
haven't just not done their job; they betrayed us.
And if you want to see the greatest form of betrayal in Australian politics, and I can't believe he got away with it, and it doesn't inspire people to just lose their shit, is when Scott Morrison was asked, after he'd managed to get a huge sway of the people vaccinated, most of them against their will, he said in a press conference, no one was forced. It was a choice.
Yeah.
And he had that disgusting, condescending grin on his face.
Yes.
It just, yeah.
It's yeah. And then I remember having a moment. Sorry.
We are plugging a book here.
Oh, no,
Did you want to finish what you were saying, and then we'll plug your book?
I was going to finish off on the ScoMo. Again, whatever these people are, but I remember, when, and if you start digging into ScoMo's background, it's pretty dodgy. And, I had the realization that, a handful of compromised people basically can control the country. You've got the Prime Minister, the Governor General, and the state premiers all on the take somehow. Basically, they've got us by the short and curlies. But the betrayal of that, right? This is supposed to be the highest office of the land. It's where I saw McGowan over here talking about being a CEO of Western Australia. It's like, we're not your employees. That's not how this works.
No.
That's not the contract.
You're our employee. Yeah,
exactly. We trusted you with the power that's invested in you, and we've seen the inverse of that, the absolute opposite of that. And it's for me, it's just shocked me to my absolute core, Michael, of just how is this even real? Too. How is this even real?
Well, interesting though, like we thought journalists were there to give us a balanced story of what was happening, to challenge the politicians, keep them. We thought doctors would live up to the Hippocratic Oath and all they would care about was your health. Yes. We thought politicians were, they're dodgy, they lie, but inside they're patriots and they love their country. And when the chips hit the fan, all they will care about is the welfare of the country and Australians. Yeah. That might not be what we've lost, but what we want. That's what we want. That's the future we want, where the most precious thing Australia has is its children. All we look forward to is what we can leave them. These are things we want. And I think when we were talking the other day about getting more organized, is actually getting a foundation, is giving our community more of an identity. That's why we've been pushing the Blue Bee and 832 and other things like that. And literature to give it, because if you want to create an identity, you need art. You need the writing. You need the songs. You need music. You need discussion. So it's giving our things an identity. And then a destination. Adrian McRae says this, we need a destination, and maybe we don't have to reinvent a destination. We just want what we were promised. Yes. A country run by decent people, where decent people are allowed to be decent, and they're not controlled by
with our interests in mind, right? With our interests in mind of
right. I mean, look at the moment with Big Pharma, right? So I was talking to someone today. You're born within 20 minutes, they've christened you. Before the church can get to you, they've christened you with a Hep B vaccine.
Hep B, yeah.
If that Hep B vaccine affects you and does, basically you get sick from it as a child, you're going to go to Big Pharma to get the medication for you. Now you're going to have all these other stuff happening to you, all these other vaccines and other things like this. Like they say blood pressure, they've reduced. High blood pressure used to be up here. They brought it down here, so everyone has high blood pressure. So they got everybody on heart medication or the medication to reduce your blood pressure. All lies. Basically, they're treating the Western world like all of us is a money cow. What's the word?
Yes.
We're a cash cow.
A cash cow. Yeah.
A cash cow. And now BlackRock, and I've been talking to funeral directors, are buying up all the funeral parlors. So they get you from the womb to the tomb. They are just milking you. And it makes me wonder if beyond all this is, and especially with Big Pharma and vaccines, is it's just a brutal business plan. Here it is. We tell them that they need vaccines to live. The only way they can still stay healthy is to not trust their natural immunity, because the Western world is such a dangerous, unhealthy place to live in, with all the hygiene and all the stuff we have. So you need to vaccinate health. You need to have health injected into you. That's what they've sold. The miracles of vaccine. It's a business, and they've wrapped it in a false dogma,
100%.
and basically made anyone who questions it a heretic. And the prayer of that false dogma is safe and effective. Trust the
100%.
science. They're the prayers. And you can't trust it, but in actual fact, it's business. And their business is to keep you sick, because they're as big, you know what? I think their budgets are bigger than, say, Poland and Sweden. That's how huge they are. And they're not going to sustain it unless people are sick.
Yep.
That's the world.
It's not personal, Michael. It's just business, right? It's just business. And COVID injuries, vaccine injuries, that's what happens to other people. You know what I mean? And if it's other people, then, well, you know, and
I've spoken to vaccine injured people. I know there's two now I've spoken to. Both of them have spent over $100,000 in the last 4 years trying to get better.
Yeah.
Ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. You had a story. I know you had a story. I don't think you should say it here because you've got business, but that still frightens me. And this is what it is. It's justifying the unjustifiable for business. So
I
value more than life.
I had one of those moments you were talking about when you told me about BlackRock buying up funeral homes. I'm just like, this is unspeakable evil. And I remember seeing early on, Michael, when the protests were going on, and there was a lady who was a funeral director there, and she was wearing a white top, and someone said, "Why are you here?" And she said, "Because I know kids are coming next."
Yeah.
And they are, and they have, and that's what we've lived through, and that's what we watched.
My fear now is infertility, and that you're going to have a load of Australians, a load of people all over the world who got their kids vaccinated. One of the saddest stories we ever did was, and I should replay it, was a radiographer who convinced his son to get it, and his son ended up having to get a heart transplant. They almost lost him. And he used to be, he was going to be an athlete. Now he's basically a cripple living at home. And the father came on, hats off to him, and had the courage to say he was duped. He was in the medical system. He doesn't believe anything anymore. But it took losing his son to almost wake him up. There's and here is where we are now. It's waking up to how exactly are we controlled, and what do we want to do about it? You know, it's more frightening than the Matrix in a way, because it's harder to see. You know,
and but you can't unsee it once you have, right? And that's the
that's it.
You know, and maybe an interesting one for your thoughts, Michael. What do you think? What do you think why aren't the vaccinated interested about the vaccinated? Because it's only the unvaxxed that seem to be giving a shit about the people who have had their lives destroyed by this. And I that just breaks my heart.
I sympathize with both. I interviewed a young man today. He's vax injured. He took Novavax. One of the questions we asked him at the end is, you get up in the morning, you put on your social media, and you see this person died suddenly. Like, you know, every day might be 3 people, 30s, 40s, early 50s, just died suddenly. And I said, do you think that could be happening to you? He goes, yes. Every day I wake up and think maybe I'm next. So I've just got to live while I'm living. I don't think it's evil that they don't want to look after the vaccine injured. I think they feel like they've had a time bomb, voluntarily injected a time bomb into their system, and they're very aware that they could be next, and there's not much they can do about it.
Best not to talk about it.
It's that. Whereas I think we have sympathy for the vaccine injured, not so much to prove a point like Salia didn't work. It's that for 3 years, we were on the lowest rung of society. They put us down. They put us down there. And the government actually said, you can be nasty to them. You can call them names. The media did. The Prime Minister called us cookers. You can do whatever you want to them. Take all your anger out on those people who are trying to kill you because they don't do what they're told. So, but then another group formed beneath us, and that was the vaccine injured.
Yeah.
And they are the forgotten. They are the ignored. They are the shunned. I've seen women I've seen, well, I know several severely vaccinated people who can't get the NDIS. But when I was in one town in New South Wales, there was a 70-year-old in his mid-70s, trans, and he looked like his makeup kit had exploded on his face. And I've got nothing against trans, but he had an NDIS carer. So he gets an NDIS carer, and these people don't. You know, there's this insanity going on that's engineered. It's not actually insane. It's only insane if you look at it from our perspective. That doesn't make sense from a human perspective. But if you want to look at it from an anti-human perspective, suddenly everything makes sense.
Yeah, anti-human. That's yeah.
That's
I'm
our
not
trouble.
sure. I can't remember where I shared with you, but we had a broken window here, and a guy, a great glazier, came along, sorted it all out for us. And he was chatting away at the end, and it came. He brought up the conversation, and he said, "Did you take the vaccine?" And I said, "I don't really like talking about it," but I was just like, "No, I didn't." And he goes, "Good for you." And I was like,
wow.
"Oh, well, thank you." And then he goes, "They've poisoned us, haven't they?" And I was like,
That's why they don't talk about it.
"Yeah." And I gave him the detox protocol and all that kind of thing, but that's the omerta code at the moment, right? That's the silence is just, fuck, what have we done? And
they're trying to move on, but they've been betrayed. It's like waking up to realizing that there's your father. And I remember years ago, you'd meet, we were doing this other project, and we were having to talk to a lot of children who'd been sexually abused, usually by their father. And they didn't know until they went to school and something came up at school, and they're going, "Oh, my father does that to me. That's abuse." They didn't know. They didn't know any better. And how you deal with that. This person that you're expecting and suddenly is doing something evil to you. And it's, you know,
that's quite the parallel, Michael. That's quite the
I know.
parallel.
And now the whole country's been that. That's why when we were in Melbourne marches, there was a lot of women there. A lovely friend of mine called Susanna, she used to cry, but a lot of women were there going, "I've come out of an abusive relationship, and I'm at the Freedom Rally because Dan Andrews is abusing the whole state. This is how they do it." And so
that was my story.
Yeah.
That's how I recognized this shit, because I didn't know it was possible. Yeah, that was my story. And that's what opened me up to understanding what gaslighting is, what coercive control is, all these kinds of things.
Well, you're abused as a child.
Not as a child, as in a personal relationship. In a personal relationship. And I had a pretty good upbringing, to be honest. I was a very relatively emotionally safe, that kind of thing. But that's what actually led me into it, is because I didn't know that's what people could be like. You know, I had the similar naivety in that situation that the majority of Australian people had in this one, of how would that even be possible? And it requires that rewiring of your own mind to go, no, this person is a predator. They are not operating in the same way. They're not operating they're not operating in good faith. They're not operating with an open heart. They're seeking control. And so that parallel of abusive relationships is, and it's deep and it's dark, and it requires some growing up. You know, it requires growing up around, hey, there's no one coming to save us. We've got to take responsibility. It might not have been our fault, but it happened. And we've got to grow through the experience. And certainly that's the book in part was, you know, part of that healing process in there as well, of how do I convey some of what I've learned in the more darker moments of my life.
Kind of healing for you as well, in a way.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
It was. I described it to someone. It's like, my sister said, having a kid is like having your heart on the outside of your body. My book feels a little bit like that, because it sort of spent so much time incubating in here, and then I kind of got it out, and a few people have read it, and then you're like, wow, anyone anywhere could read this.
Well, we did it like even with Goodbye Road. I was writing those essays just to clean my soul from the stories that I couldn't capture any other way. You know, things I was seeing, they were getting me, and I found that the only way I could continue the work was I had to cleanse, and that's why I wrote these essays and rants and everything like that. So it was a healing thing for me to do. So I get it. I'm just going to put it up here. This Radical Curiosity, Reclaiming Mental Freedom in Age of Indoctrination. There's the link if you want to go to the Bad Book Company, and we're marketing company there, and get it there. It's you'll love it. if you've loved listening to how articulate and raw and honest Russell is, then I recommend you get the book. It's food for thought, and that's what he does. He doesn't tell you. He gets you to think, and I think this is the only way forward. It's what art is. Art is about getting you to think rather than telling you what to think, which is kind of opposite to the woke, which they tell you.
Ironically, right? Ironically,
Yeah.
it's they ends up destroying. And I say that, Michael, is that I describe myself as a recovering lefty in the sense of I grew up relatively
too,
socially, socially. I want people to be treated nicely. I want to be kind to each other. All those kinds of things. I'd be very
We are the most
idealistic.
pathetic-looking, hard right wingers that I've ever met.
I know. They won't let me in their club. but
we're right winger.
But yeah, that's some of that. That's some of that growth. You know what I mean? Of realizing that the world isn't, and because that was what I was going to be. One of the most fascinating things I learned about communism in my quest after my friends sort of told me that they wanted to become communists was that the root of what was going on in Russia in the 1920s was scientific. They believed that they could calculate everything. That's why they came up with these massive 5-year plans and the like. It was the scientific mindset of we can rationalize our way through problems. And so it wasn't just similar, it was the same. It was the same idea. And obviously, the Russians had been through extraordinary hardship and they were going through, economic emergence and all these kinds of things. It's complex history.
Yeah.
But it was that mindset of we can solve all our problems here. We don't need God. That's opiate for the masses. That's what crazy people do. We're hard-nosed, rational people, and we can sense make our way through this. And I remember hearing Vladimir Putin talk. He said what a lot of people don't know about the Russian history is they went through the same he, she, trans jumble that we're going through now. That happened in the 1920s and 1930s in Russia, and this identity confusion and infinite choices leads us to a bad place. And as I say, for me, I grew up in an era. I was born in 1980, so I kind of grew up towards the end of all of that. I was only 9 or 10 when the wall came down. I didn't really understand. I knew it was a good thing. But then we're one generation out of that, and you've got otherwise high functioning people ready to sign their own, and not just their own, death certificate, but their kids and their future generations too. And again, the road to hell being paved with good intentions of, we're going to be solving all these problems and there's all these suffering people and all that kind of thing. But not really understanding, well, they say pride comes before a fall, right? And who in their right mind sits down and goes, you know what, we're going to solve a pandemic for the entire world, because that presupposes that we understand what the world even is to start with. And I think that's where someone like Bill Gates went a cropper, because he's like, well, I've got a computer on every desk in every lounge room or every office in the world, therefore I understand people. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't. Like, the world is much, as like you're saying about the moon moving the oceans. The world's a magical experience if you're open to it. But unfortunately, our way of life and the economic mismanagement and and again, I came back after being away for 20 years, and you find out that we didn't have a national debt back in 2006, and now we owe $1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
It's like, so what happened, folks? Like, what's going on? Who's your accountant? Because they're not doing a great job, And
we've got all this mineral wealth, and we've given all the mineral wealth away, and we've just
given it away.
Debt.
And as I say, you're talking about this guy doing the water meters. He's just thinking about, can I afford a kid? He's not thinking about, can my kid afford anything in the future? What's the quality of life for the child coming through?
That's right.
These are generational problems that have been a long time brewing, and I think, my most favorable interpretation is this was the shot across the bow that humanity needed.
Yeah.
And if we don't wake up from this, then we're going to sink, and
I agree. This is it. This is it. I even have a thing that I've been saying for a few years, but I'm going to do a rant about it tomorrow. But I'll do it to you. This is something really interesting to work with young people, and not telling them what to think, but getting them to think. So let's pretend that you're 20 or 25, say, okay? You're 25 years old and you've met someone. You think, I really like this person. And so you've been getting on for a while, and then you think, I'm going to take them to a fine dining restaurant, the best restaurant I can afford. Maybe I'm going to even ask them the question. I really want to show them how much I love them by hurting my wallet to give them this great meal. And you're sitting there at the table, and you've got this great menu, and you're so excited. And then I come along, and everyone's going about how great this restaurant is. And I come along as the waiter, and I go, sorry, sir, look, I see you're looking at the front of the menu with the big items. But I have to inform you that the people that sat at the table before you, they really dined. They had lobsters, Dom Perignon, caviar, imported caviar. I mean, they went nuts. And unfortunately, at the end of the meal, they discovered that they didn't have enough to pay for the entire meal. So before you order, we just have to let you know that you're going to have to pay the shortfall that they couldn't afford. And then you can order. And if you want to look at more budget items, on the back of the menu, at the you'll see porridge and bread and water. We did have cheese, but it's too expensive now. And then you say to the person's looking at you, young person's looking at you, you say to the young person, so here's the question. Would you pay that bill? And they look at you. They know it's a trick. And then they finally go, no, of course I wouldn't. And then I go, so why are you paying the national debt?
Yeah. I've got a mate of mine. He's got a daughter that's, I think, a similar kind of age, 20-something-ish, early 20s.
Yeah.
He was telling me he went to pick her up from a night out or whatever, and she said he noticed that the pub was absolutely, where she picked her up from, or the restaurant or whatever, was absolutely rocking. And he said to her, it's like, I thought everyone was supposed to be broke. Like, what is everyone, why is everyone out having a great time? And she said, well, because we know we can't afford a house. We know we can't afford a future. So we're just going to have a good time now.
Great.
And so you've got a younger generation that's cycling, an older generation that's getting older, and there's again that increasing disconnect between the two of them. And you can't blame them, right? Because exactly as you say,
no, I wouldn't blame them. That's how I live. I live.
Here's your slice of the shit sandwich, which you didn't order, but it's yours to eat, And
that's right. That's right.
It's but yeah, I think. And maybe, as they maybe fuel, that kind of thing that's again a great universalizer that everyone's connected by.
Don't drive.
Perth. Yeah,
I
had a PTSD reaction, Michael, when they were like, the fuel's coming and they're going to lock us down again. I was just like, you can't be serious. Like, you just can't be serious. But that's what they did in WA. The government here in WA patted themselves on the back and said, next time we're going to bring in the military. That's the world we're living in. The same guys that are now voted in with an election where they ran out of ballots. It's like, all right, what is going on here? And then, and then you see they've got one of those, those tank things for the police. They parked it out the front of Optus Stadium before the Dockers game. It's like there aren't any. This is Perth. You know what I mean? Like, and then
Thanks,
and then lo and behold, in Australia Day, there's a bomb threat in town.
They do. Yeah, no, I know. And they think that Perth ordered 4 of those Bearcats. You don't need armored vehicles. Yeah, you don't need armored vehicles to police Australians.
No,
we are not. We're just. You don't need them. You don't even need all the stormtrooper gear they wear. You just don't need it.
I think we got machine guns in supermarkets here now.
Yeah,
in shopping centers, armed, like heavily armed police in Perth.
Yeah.
It's like there's only one reason why there's a problem. It's you guys have created it. You've created the problem here, and but we're paralyzed. And so that's what my book was an attempt to start the conversation with people and do it in a non-judgmental way about this is we've been through our everyone's got to go through a process of humility, and being humbled and realizing that they. Being wrong isn't the end of the world. You know what I mean? Like being wrong isn't the end of the world. It's actually an exciting opportunity in many ways.
Yeah.
But it also sucks when you realize it. And it sucks when, you've been really for something. And, a good example for me, right? My older brother's gay. I spoke at his wedding and all these kinds of things. I'm a big proponent of same-sex marriage, all these kinds of things. But when you look into the background of the legislative changes and all these kinds of things, there's lots of subtlety and nuance that needs to be thought about and considered. And so when we end up making decisions that are emotionally based, and I was emotionally based because I'm all for it because I want the best for my brother.
Yeah.
you've got to have the adults in the room to say, okay, well, that's great, but there's also these other things that you need to take into consideration if we're going to keep everything together. And you know, my brother-in-law's mum, you know, her take, you know, she obviously loves her son to bit, and she was like, no, I'm all for it. They should just call it something different. And that was the first little, oh, well, hang on a minute, this is your son, and you're still, you know. And I think that's the, you know, we need an Australia where we can have adult conversations about complicated things without people losing their shit. You know what I mean? And just be like, these are real problems, guys, and we need some serious people at the table, because the people at the top aren't. Anthony Albanese is not a serious person, Michael. That's not a serious person running the country.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just, this isn't serious. And the biggest problem I see is when you have unserious people and a crisis that happens that's not within your control happens, and you need the unserious people making important decisions, and they can't do it because they're caught up in identity politics and finding somebody yell about Pauline Hanson and blame her for it. You know what I mean? Rather than like, you guys are in charge right now. You can do things. You can solve this problem. But I think a lot of them are so ideologically captured that they wouldn't even, you couldn't even get them to the table. But it is I guess the pain duration for us is how long is it going to take till we get some adults in the room to actually just make some common sense decisions for people, and then go through that process. I believe we need remembrance for COVID in the same way we've got it for World War II and World War One.
I think shrines to the people who died, especially with the vaccine. They said it was war. I just want to see if this works. Oh, it's too small. Yeah, it's probably small. This is when the same-sex marriage came out. This is how much of a disgusting right-winger I am. I actually did a calendar of love. That was one of the photos I took. I went out and took photos of lesbians and gay couples who had been in long-term relationships. These guys have been together 23 years. And I just like capturing the love. To me, they're in love. I think you're born gay, you're born this, that's it. I'm not a believer that they do it for any other reason. And I just wanted to capture that. So when people say that I'm this right winger, you go, you have no idea.
You're a pretty crap right winger, Michael.
I was left.
No offense.
You put me in right. You know what I mean? You turned the world over and suddenly I'm upside down. What? I'm a right winger. I'm a Nazi. I'm a Nazi.
Yeah. Totally.
I got that bus that says free speech defense. I was in Balaclava in Melbourne, and some young guys going, free speech defense. Only a Nazi would have that on his bus. I popped my head out the window and said, you really said that? You know, this is where we are. I want to plug this again. This is Radical Curiosity. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Vogel, who's watching it, reaches out to you and wants to get you on his show. And I would urge you, as this poured out of Russell, I would urge you, write your stories. We have to capture our history. And you might not think your story is important, but honestly, you don't know. These are things that could ripple through history, but there will be no ripples if we leave it to the state we're in, because they will eradicate our history and we will vanish. And we're too important to vanish. So write your history, write your philosophy. All of you have been through an odyssey, not a journey. You've been through an odyssey. I hope to meet you again while I'm here, but you've been through an odyssey, and odyssey means you've got something to write about, because you've learned lessons. You've had to survive being ostracized. You've had to survive being portrayed on an industrial level. I mean, all these things, and we're still here talking, and we haven't given in. There are lessons to learn from this, from all of us. I'm trying to get my friend Tom Vogel to write a story. I think he'd write a great story. So you're watching, so write it, Tom. Just do it, buddy. And,
well, I remember the story you shared about the girl who snuck into the hospital to be with her dying grandmother.
Yeah, every night.
You know what I mean? Like that's how Australia gets its heart back. Remembering who we are.
We should build statues to. There should be statues everywhere, just like a bed. And these two people spooning, you can sit on the bed with them and have your thing. And there's this couple, and that was it. In a time where suddenly the state said letting people die alone is good, you know, that it's just, you know, we can't let you see your dying mother, because we have a friend watching. I don't know if she's watching now. Petra lost her daughter. It's one of the most horrific stories we covered. Really heartbreaking, but she had to fly down to Melbourne to see her daughter was in a dying basically in the hospital behind a glass thing because they didn't want to get COVID. And she's
Mm.
at the hospital. She's come all the way down. There's her daughter. They're not letting her see her. And then a surgeon came in, or a head doctor, and he said, "Fucking let her in."
Mm.
There's where you find hope.
Go that guy, yeah.
The hope are in the little acts of defiance,
Yes,
and so these are the things. There's a lot of hope out there. Is
Yeah.
there anything else you'd like to say to wrap this up? I've got one more thing to say to one person in the audience, but is there anything else you'd like to say while I plug your book?
No, just other than thank you, Michael.
It really makes you think.
Yeah, thank you for all you do. And you, as I said when we first met. No, but I mean that you were the first person I saw speaking out about this.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like I mean that
Yeah.
you were in the marches, and then it was like, and that was I obviously didn't know you at the time, but it was like, because I was like, where are all the sane people? Like, where are all the normal people, all the clear thinking, common sense people? And that was before I knew you'd gone and done Cafe Lockdown, all those kinds of things. But I think it's not underestimating the power that a demonstration of courage actually has, because you inspired me in that way, and that's what my book is an attempt to recalibrate people, help them remember that they're not crazy, and then also to give them a little bit of courage to have those conversations or pushback, or and have the courage to think for yourself, because it's not like thinking of yourself is not an easy thing to do. It takes practice. We get things wrong. We've got to take responsibility.
Freedom
takes
takes
courage. But it's what's it worth to you? What's it worth to you? And I remember watching. And this is what I mean. Like I know Topher's done his documentary on battleground Melbourne, these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Watching on from Western Australia, watching that unfold in our own country, it was just nightmare fuel. And yet you saw
that documentary, but I had COVID.
All right.
I was supposed to be a part of it, but I couldn't.
But for me, like you say, they're the people who history are going to remember. You guys that were at the shrine and all that kind of stuff. That's actually the birth of a new myth. It's a birth of a new myth around who we are, and that's what we need as Australia. We need a new story around who we are and what we stand for and what we believe. I'll do a quick shout out for the secession guys as well. If anyone's interested in the secession project for Western Australia, it's this book here. Yeah. And it's well worth a Google and an investigation into, because there are some serious people who are thinking, about how we can do things different, exactly. And I think that's what we've got to shift into now. It's like, yes, we've obviously got to honor what's happened and grieve and all those kinds of things. But I think it's important to come up with an inspiring vision for the, for our kids and to give them something to want to be part of, because 50 years a debt slave, like that's not an adulthood that's inspiring for anybody to subscribe to. So yeah, but yeah, anyway, I think that's enough, Michael. Thank you.
You're right, though. We can't just sit here whinging and complaining. It's time to talk solutions, and then enact solutions, but talk deeply about solutions. That's another reason to have you on. And I hope I see you again. It's getting people together who want to have these difficult conversations. Not that we might find any answers, but we're not going to find answers by not doing it.
Totally. Totally. And denial just makes the problem bigger. You know what I mean? It's like it's an unhealed wound, and we've just got to dive into it. And I know there's lots of factors outside of our control at the moment. There's a crazy geopolitical landscape. We're in really uncharted water. But for me, it's more, honoring the people who had the strength to stand up. And, I got off pretty lightly. My price I paid was isolation and aloneness. But there's people who have lost everything because of the idiocy of our state. And I can remember, just before we finish, Michael, I can remember, in the spirit of these bone-shaking conversations or statements that people make, I remember I traveled over to Sydney and I met up with some friends. One lives up near my brother in northern New South Wales. And I said, how is everyone? How is everyone going? Like, because I've been locked away for 3 years or whatever. Like, and it was amazing, the shift and the normalization of just atrocious things. And just in casual conversation, she shared about how some kids had died because they couldn't get across the border to get their treatment. And but didn't even register it in the, when you just can't even believe what you're hearing. And like, this is Australia, and we have, and it's all of us, right? I guess this is the reality. We don't want to be in tribes anymore. Like, ours is an open party to come and join.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're going to have some uncomfortable truths we need to process, but
Yeah.
we're kind of on the winning side here of truth, and that doesn't bring us any joy. It doesn't bring us any lightness or happiness. But
No.
we can either argue with reality or work with it, and unfortunately, the reality is very sobering and very uncomfortable. But it
Yeah, it
starts
is.
with shifting inside ourselves. And as I say, that's what my book's about: is giving people the confidence to be able to rethink what they maybe thought they knew, and then
Yeah.
give them that freedom and that space to make different choices in the future. So.
Yeah, I totally. I want to just share this though. This is, as you said, I inspired you. Tom Vogel he and I met. He was a filmmaker. He also had a short film festival, and we met at our first protest together. And we've been working at first not together straight away, but ever since we've been working together. He's incredibly brave. I know he goes through far more than what people know. He does these. He started doing these what the fuck things, which are just like a little pearl of common sense, and that grew
Yes.
into the what the fuck boys, which should go on because they're really interesting discussions. And but here I just want to share this. Let's see if it gets up. I just want to share his. Can we just get that up, Kel? Where are we? My God, there's so many comments there. Follow Tom Vogel on this. He just comes up with these. He just comes up with. He looks at the world. He just does, and he breaks it down into its little pieces, and just does a what the fuck on it. But he gets you to think. He doesn't tell you what. Just puts it out there, and usually the answer is what the fuck, which is what he goes, and he's right. But really, really, I would suggest you follow him because he gives me solace. He makes me feel, yeah, I'm not nuts, and so
well, it's important.
How we
So lastly, just before we finish up, Michael, the last
Sure.
little plug is the vision for my book is to get into high schools. And year 11, year 12, I think it's written at a level that they can comprehend and understand. And for me, that's the gift to the generation coming
maybe the
after
homeschool
me,
movement.
The freedom of
thought.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this is the literature of the homeschool
because
movement.
I want to give Australian kids a fighting chance, and they're being lied to at the moment. They're being institutionally lied to, and that's not not fair. Yeah. And so if there's anyone out there that wants to help, just nudge that into being, then I'm just going to be sharing that when I speak to people about the book, because that's who I had in mind, sharing these ideas with. Because for me, so much, Michael, growing up in Perth, I needed to leave. It's an isolated place, and it was only when I moved to I went to Melbourne, and I was like, wow, there's a big world out here, and I went to America and ended up living abroad. And I think it changes your perspective in a way that's kind of difficult to express in words. But for me, that's the gift that I want to pass on, that there is you don't have to think the way you've been taught how to think. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to be different. You are allowed to do whatever the fuck you want to do with your life. That's your right as an Australian citizen. And we need to get that back and be filling our kids with confidence that they can make change. And if we can go in as the older generation and wipe out layers of bureaucracy and crap for them to spark that rebirth. But that's what I want for the Australian future. I want it to be a place where people can be creative and expressive, or if they just want to be left the hell alone, they can just be left the hell alone, because that's
I want
that's
to
how
be.
it used to
I run
be.
a large homeschool group in Boston, and we would love you. Hey, Marzipan, I've got another piece called The Judgmental Puddle. Tom knows about that. I'd love to, if you want to contact us at michael@cafelockedout.com. michael@cafelockedout.com. We'd love to be in touch, and I'll also put you in touch with Russell. And
that'd be amazing.
Going from there. I just want to go out with this. Look, mate, I'm so glad you came on. I really enjoyed our first conversation. I really enjoyed meeting you the other night. And so hopefully while I'm here, we'll meet up again, because
I would like that.
It's just great to talk.
Yes.
I just want to talk about this. This is Sam Ferris says that this is hell, and he wishes he was wrong, man. Well, look, I'll tell you why I know this isn't hell. So they called the novel Goodbye Road, and because we were kicked out of society, we're on Goodbye Road, get out of here. And we became the orphans of Goodbye Road. That's this. And we I mean, instead of crawling back to the government going, please, please, jab me, let me back in, we found each other. You're an orphan of Goodbye Road. Now we've got this friendship, and the friendship breeds hope. Tom Vogel here, he and I often interact. We might not be able to heal each other's problems, but we spread hope, even amongst each other. There's things like that. And then on the road, when I was going round several times, I had no idea at my age that I would meet someone who is a very feisty, strong woman, but wants me. And now she comes to me on the road, and I feel that she's a gift from the universe. I couldn't do the work without Kelly. And so one night I wrote this song very quickly. I know you hate AI guys, but this really took me like 20, 30 minutes. It just came out. And that's what I'm saying. This road we're on, this Goodbye Road, there's friendship out here. There's love out here. There's hope out here. And if that's out here, then that proves that this isn't hell. It might be a battleground. It might be a spiritual war we're in. I don't know. But there's always hope. And never give up. Just never give up, because then they win. Don't let them fill your heart with hate, and never give up. And so I'm going to go out with, thank you again for coming on. And I'm going to go out with the song I wrote for Kelly called Mary Magdalene. And she's a feisty thing. And Mary Magdalene, they go, wasn't she a hooker? No, she wasn't. The real story is that she was Jesus's partner, maybe even his wife, maybe even fathered kids to him. But what they really think is she was the feminine balance of his masculine. So she was that. And over the years, it's been corrupted down to make her what they say. But that's what she actually was. And that's the philosophy I used when I wrote this piece. And we don't know. It's 2,000 years ago. I don't know what happened last week, let alone what happened 2,000 years ago. But it's a cool story.
It was the original fake news, Michael. Original fake news.
Original fake news. Okay, take care, everybody. And have a listen, Sam, because this is how Kelly has affected my life, and I'm the better for it. And I would never have found her if it wasn't for COVID. So no one knows what's ahead of us, and we'll never find out if you quit. So stick around and fight. Even it's the fight of our lives. When we get to the other side, we've got a load of great stories to tell. Take care, Russell. See ya.
Thanks, Michael.
Mary Magdalene. Okay, and if anyone wants to do a human cover, please get in contact. See you tomorrow with Lee. Lee's back. Lee's back with his.
I wanted to find a lover who made me forget the universe, or rather made the universe feel like it was starting within. I wanted to find a lover I could paint a picture with, and our paint would be each other, and our hues would be alive. But I've been offered love in poetry, psychoanalyzed to the bone. I've been broken and consecrated, I've been discarded in the thorns. I've been searching in all the wrong places, for I felt that that's where you'd be found. Or am I the one that's reaching like a weed, escaping the ground? And if I find you, will the universe fall away? And when I ask you, are you the one for me, will you say, look at me, until you can see that I am who I am. I am Mary Magdalene. I wanna find a lover to illuminate my empty streets, find that lover who is out there looking for me. For surely there has to be, surely there has to be. I wanna find a lover, that's why I'm falling into you. As you it seems are falling just as deeply into me. As you it seems are falling just as deeply into me. Have you noticed? The universe is gone, I can feel it in our joints, struggling to begin. And when I ask you, are you the one for me? Look at me, you'll say. Look at me until you can see that I am who I am. I am Mary Magdalene.